Ricky Williams was born in San Diego, California. From a young age, he excelled in sports such as soccer, baseball, and track and field. His college football career began in Austin, Texas, as a fullback. In 1998, at the age of 21, he had one of the best college football seasons in history with 2,124 yards and 27 touchdowns. That year he received the prestigious Heisman Trophy, 2 Doak Walker Awards, and the Maxwell and Walter Camp Player of the Year award. During his senior year in Texas, Williams discovered cannabis and everything changed. The plant calmed him down, made him more introspective, and even a better player.
Mr. Williams, what lesson can you take away from your time in the NFL regarding cannabis?
The main thing is really about quality, and it's something that I've really just been making sense of. Is what I loved about the NFL was so much time and energy was put into us being the best we could possibly be. Like that on each of our individual level, we had to train and watch film and prepare ourselves. So we had to work on our own quality of what we were contributing. But the beauty of it was in football, it's a team sport. So all of us have to come together and create something together. And as an entrepreneur, building a team, and making sure that building this team that we share the same mission and that we're all working on ourselves to be able to contribute internal quality to make what we're putting out into the market the best we can possibly be. And so I think sometimes in business, you have to make difficult decisions, business decisions over quality. And what I learned in football is there's no shortcuts. And that if you stay true to what you believe in and you keep working towards it, the quality will shine through. And the other thing is in football, you can talk all you want, but after the game, what you did is on film. And so making sure that we're not just talking about quality, but what we do on a daily basis is making sure that we're putting the quality into our brand.
That's so incredible. And it's so true because it's not only,
I like that.
Yeah, it's not only how you see yourself within the team, but how the team works with everybody else in input.
Yeah, and it's funny, like just to build on this question, a football team, it's like there's a head coach and the coach has the plan, and then everyone has to like do their part to buy into the plan, and it was nice when everyone was on the same page and bought in. But when you had people that didn't agree with the plan, things would kind of go other directions. And it was a coach's job to get everyone on the same page and to get everyone on the same page and to get everyone on the same page. Because for quality, there has to be a cohesive vision, and there has to be someone on the team that is the vision holder that reminds everyone and keeps bringing people back to what that vision is, right? And I've noticed, I watched coaches do it, and I saw coaches that did it well, and I saw coaches that didn't do it well. And I find myself when I'm talking to the team, I'm like transforming into some of those coaches, because realizing it's the same task. It's getting guys on the same page and believing in the vision, because you have to believe in the vision to go that extra mile to actually put the quality time, mindset into what we're doing. And so, as football, it's like performance is directly connected to what they call character building. When you walk into an NFL meeting room, there's like words on the wall, like commitment and dedication and teamwork and focus, right? Because coaches realize that each person has to keep becoming better to be able to contribute to the team becoming better. And I realized this is what I learned in my own personal experience with cannabis is I'd go to work and I'd come home and I'd smoke a little bit and I'd reflect on my day and think, how can I be better? How can I be better? Right? And so I utilized cannabis to become better, and it helped me become the best football player. And so in starting a cannabis brand where that's really our mission is how to become a better person, how to achieve your greatness, is that each person on the team in whatever little way has to be living that and manifesting that for it to carry through and be something that people can feel when they interact with our brand. And so I realized that I'm not just, the vision holder, but I also, part of the vision is encouraging everyone on the team to keep working on themselves, And our team is mostly men. And it's interesting, cannabis is a feminine plant, right? This idea of it can put you more in touch with your emotions, okay? But even men, when they get more in touch with their emotions, they still keep them inside. So they just become crazier. And so really encouraging the guys in our meetings, right? If you're upset about something or something's on your mind, like, put it on the table, right? And so it's utilizing, what we're creating to really get my mission out into the world and getting everyone on the same page. So I'm enjoying the process, and I feel like it's people on the outside that interact with our brand, they feel it, and so it's been very rewarding.
Thank you. That was it brings so many truths about the plant, what you just talked about, because it is also connected to the philosophy that surrounds the plant and the people that believe in it. It's not just an individual effort, but it has to be a team effort to bring the plant to more people, to make it more available. So yeah, it really connects that way. You are so spot on.
Yeah. I didn't realize it, but it's just the more I work with the plant in my own personal life and in dealing with people, it kind of becomes more obvious. I feel like it's yelling at me. This is really about bringing people together. That's been my experience. And I feel like to be genuine in launching this brand, I have to lead with my experience.
Wow, that is so inspiring. What a fabulous answer. Okay, what was the experience in the Himalayas for you? How does it translate to your cannabis brands?
Yeah, so it's a couple of ways. I think one, I would say education. And two, I feel like there's these moments in life, and the way we talk about them is we say our mind is blown, right? It's like these big paradigm shifts where we thought the world was one way and then we realize it's different. And I think those are so important in our journey to happiness, to being ourselves, And so, I left the NFL, and I had a lot of ambivalence around my relationship with cannabis because everyone was against it. And the story was that I gave up millions of dollars and I ruined my life because of it. Where my personal experience is, this is something that I find valuable and puts me in greater touch with myself. And eventually I found that being in touch with myself and feeling good was more important than the fame and the money. Okay? So I'm traveling around the world, and I realized in the story I'm saying, and it was real, that I left football because I needed to go on a spiritual journey. Okay. So it started off with cannabis, but it ended up with me learning about astrology and Ayurveda and studying yoga. So I'm in yoga with my spiritual teacher, and she's so proud of my how serious I took the spiritual practice that to reward me, she was taking me to the Himalayas, to a town called Gangotri, the source of the Himalayas, to meditate in a cave for a week. Okay. Because I was a big meditator. So we're driving up the Himalayas, and again, I'm not even thinking about cannabis because I'm on my spiritual journey, and I'm in India with my yoga teacher. We're not smoking together, She was anti. And so that's the whole thing, right? I'm sitting with my old school yoga teacher, and we're driving up the Himalayas, and we're in the car, and I look outside the window, and I'm and I look, and I'm like, that looks like cannabis, and the driver's like, yes, it is. And it's just growing naturally, for miles. And in my mind, it's one of those moments where my mind can't process what it can't process what's going on just because of where I come from, And we got to the town where we were staying, in the little hotel where I was staying. I was walking up the stairs, and I was looking on the ground, and it was just cannabis plants, just growing kind of like weeds, and it was just so natural, right? And no one was everyone was normal around it, and so it was strange. And as it just was this experience where I realized there's so much more to the story than we've been told. And it really set me on a path to really understand the history of this plant, and it's obvious now, but at the time back in 2004, especially after the experience I just had, it was a powerful moment. And so the way it translates into the brand is really taking like what started in that moment of realizing this plant isn't all bad and becoming curious about like how people have utilized this. It set me on the path to realize that people have used cannabis for a long time to improve their connection to themselves and to nature and to what people call God. And just having that frame of reference and reviewing my cannabis use, it matches so much more closely to that than it does to escaping or being lazy or any of those other things that I was told. And a big part of the brand is telling that story of cannabis, right? Not even needing to resist the stigma or the old story, but just telling a more historically accurate story about cannabis.
Yeah, it has also to do with how the West has viewed the plant and how has stigmatized it. So that when we confront what other cultures, how other cultures see it and use it, then you have this shock between what you know and what you are seeing, and the difference is considerable at that point.
There's another moment that this reminds me of is I was in Jamaica. I grew up a really huge Bob Marley fan. And I had the opportunity to meet his family when I lived in Miami, and they invited me down to where he was born in 9 Mile, Jamaica. And so in the little compound where he grew up, there's an old rock, and his brother said, Bob used to smoke a spliff, sit on that rock and read the Bible. And I was like, you can smoke and read the Bible? And then because Bob did it, and I went and got the Bible and I got a spliff and I ran up to the rock, and it was the most amazing experience. I really connected. And again, it really opened my mind to there's so many possibilities with this plant, but just even the way our mind thinks, okay, it really closes us off to understanding the potential.
Yeah, and also it's that point when you start connecting the points that you see that, oh, this is why this happened, and this is why this happened, and that's when you realize, oh yeah, I'm in the right place at the right time, because this is the time when I was able to understand what I had to understand. Yes. And there was a question about astrology, and that's what I love about astrology. It's the same thing. I think what cannabis and astrology both have in common is they both put us in contact with our feeling. Right? Be a part of us that recognizes these patterns and notices these things. And I think sometimes when we're so busy, trying to take care of our family and our friends and everyone, we're so focused on the outside that we forget to reconnect and tune in to the inside, And I find, especially after consuming cannabis and I sit down with my own astrological chart or someone else's chart, I notice patterns, right? And I notice synchronicities, and it helps me understand the events of the day and put them in a different perspective that feels more cohesive and more holistic to me. Right now, with astrology, how do you see the growth that you were able to achieve with cannabis and see that those what's the name and the word, well, how those phone connect, how do you see the growth there for you personally? So when I started consuming cannabis more regularly, okay, what appealed to me was I'd come home and I'd smoke and I'd lay down or I'd sit down and I'd just start reflecting on my day, and I started recognizing things about myself that I didn't notice, why was I so upset with this person today? Why did I respond that way? On that curiosity, I started to understand myself. But as I understood myself, I had all these questions of where did these things come from?
And a couple of months after I retired, I met this woman who was an astrologer, and we started having a conversation. And I could tell that through the use of astrology, I could understand these parts of myself that I was getting more in touch with using cannabis. And so I think cannabis helps our sensitivity to be aware of what's going on inside. And I think astrology is like a way to help us make sense of and understand those things.
So for you, it's more, it brings balance. Do you think?
Well, it brings, so definitely, I think that's what cannabis does. But this idea of balance, you know, I think where I tend to live is really in the realm of big ideas. I rarely think about the effects of behaviors on myself. I tend to think, how do my behaviors affect my community and the world? And so, like, it's just a different vibration. And so I feel like the cannabis helps me stay in tune with the larger picture, and that sensitivity and utilizing my understanding of astrology helps me, like, because astrology is an energetic language. And I think just when we talk about masculine and feminine, one example is feminine is our ability to perceive something, to be aware of it. And masculine is then what we do with it. Okay. And the more clarity we have, because it's one thing to like, I feel like I'm pissed off. Okay. I feel like I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, why am I so pissed off? And I'm aware that I'm pissed off because I'm sensitive. Why am I so pissed off? Okay. And then I can look at the chart, and I look at my chart and I say, what's Mars doing? Okay. Oh, Mars is on Venus. Okay. Are there any ways in my life that I'm not expressing myself, my passion fully in my relationships? And I'll say, oh yeah, okay, there are some things that all right. And then I have that conversation, or I address it, and then it changes and it moves. And I'm like, okay, I feel better. So it's really like a map to help me navigate my inner world and how to mesh what's going on the inside and finding constructive and productive ways to express myself in the world.
So for you will be like, with the cannabis, you see that you said the big picture, and then with astrology, you can pinpoint where you're gonna do with your energy and how you're gonna devote that energy to do good for the community.
Exactly. And it's,
okay.
You know, it's the thing that I want to stress is with cannabis, what I notice, it's about being aware and being sensitive to what's really going on with me. Right? Meaning, like, I feel like moods, feelings, these things, they arise from within. Right? And so it's like, you know, this urge to do something. It rises from within. What do I do with it? What do I do with it? You know, and astrology can help me understand, okay, just to give me ideas of how I can utilize my energy. And then it's even like checking my answers, you know? I did this and it worked. I feel better, right? Or I did this and it just created more trouble. Okay, maybe next time I need to find a different way to handle this. Yeah.
That's amazing, because usually when we do that, in that introspection, that personal introspection, you then don't have like the focus to go and really devote the energy to where it really will be positive for you and for the rest. And it's incredible how this like you said, these two elements just mash to make it possible and bring positive to everything, to you and to the rest. And that is cool.
Yeah. And so what I've noticed is I didn't really start consuming cannabis until I was in my mid-20s. And by this time I was an extremely successful athlete. So I'd already like proven to myself that like I could set goals and I could accomplish them. So for me, when I consumed cannabis, it was more assisting, helping me be more creative in setting goals and accomplishing them. And I think sometimes people who haven't proven to themselves or build up enough self-confidence that they can achieve things, that sometimes when they smoke, it just activates their imagination and they just kind of build sandcastles in the sky. And instead of utilizing that energy to create something, it just is dissipated in kind of the imagining. And so I think like, that's why we try to talk about, and we really want to promote people being honest, successful people being honest and talking about how they utilize cannabis. Yeah. because most of the stories that are passed down are just propaganda to tell people that it's bad, and there's no more accurate, it's not even better or worse, it's just more accurate stories from people who are extremely successful and utilize cannabis to assist them in whatever they're successful in.
How do you think that right now goes to like team sports like NFL and hockey and all them, where they're being more accepting of the plan to a certain point, we know that. But do you see that they are making that connection? And do you think, like you just said, they are devoting that, not letting that energy to diffuse, but really pinpointing it to something that will be productive and will bring good to the community, to the world at large?
Yeah, I think yes and no. I think the nature of the plant, it's going to always, there's always going to be some of that clarity, but because of the stigma and everything attached to it, I think we can maximize it. So as an example, most of the guys, professional athletes that smoke, right, they don't do it out in the open. And because they don't do it out in the open, most of them, it's something that they hide. So most of them haven't really taken the time to do the research and really to understand what's going on. And I think as it becomes more accepted and there's more research, and not only the science research, but the players research, right? If players can smoke in the open, they can experiment, they can share notes with their friends. It becomes more of an open conversation, whereas people are learning. Because, it's like anytime there's any kind of prohibition, it creates a dark age, right? But coming out of that dark age, it always creates a renaissance. And so I think as more people who are brilliant minds who could really use cannabis are less inhibited by the stigma, and they step in and start having experiences with cannabis and start sharing their stories, right? Brilliant minds, okay, sharing their stories. I think that and these athletes, right, sharing how they utilize cannabis to activate their imagination or recovery, or right, and they're comfortable talking about it, and this exchange of information, that's what I'm excited about.
Do you think your life obviously has been very positive for you, but do you think that if openness to the plant that exists at this time, if it had been the scenario when you were playing football, would you still stay in the sport, or would you still think? I know it's a very would you have done it or would you not? But do you think you would have stayed in the sport, or would you still have left? Do you think, since it was the time for you to be learning something?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think I would have stayed, and I think I would have played, but I also think I would have taken on more of a position of advocacy. Because even towards the end of my career, I'd already started my path as a meditator and as an alternative healer. And so the way I understand cannabis is a wonderful tool, a wonderful healing tool. And so I think if this were the case, then I would be a strong advocate in promoting the healing use of cannabis and really using my platform to expand that conversation. Because all the time when I played, I always had this, there's a football player that played in the 1960s by the name of Jim Brown. And he wasn't only one of the best running backs ever, but he was an advocate, just an activist, and really stood up for the rights of African Americans in the United States, was a powerful player in the civil rights movement. And growing up, I always looked up to him because he used his athletic ability to create a platform to speak to larger causes. But, times have changed. And so the decade or the times that I played football in, players were expected to not say anything because it was a distraction. So players just play football. And I think one of the things that tormented me, and I think one of the reasons I ended up retiring early, is because I needed to have something more fulfilling in what I was doing. And so I think it's funny, I didn't think it would be cannabis, but here we are. And I think if I would have found this in a time where it was safe to get an expression of this need to stand up for something that's important to me, I think I would have really enjoyed it.
I think Ali wanted to make a question. Oliver, you there?
I'm here. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
A terrible connection. I'm really sorry, but I'm back. Don't worry.
Good.
All right, Mr. William. What experience helped you make the decision to create your wellness brand?
Yeah. I think for most true entrepreneurs, they see a need and they know that they have the ability to do something to fill it. And for me, that was the case, is that through my experiences of being a professional athlete and having to deal with injuries and that played a major part in my life. And, growing up as a kid who was sick all the time, it's just wellness is something that was always in the back of my mind. How can I recover for next week's game or whatever, is how can I get better so that I can perform? And so I had a lot of experiences of working on myself. And then after retiring, and I started studying alternative medicine, different forms of body work. And so I was in this unique position where I was trained as an athlete and being on the receiving side of doing all this, the things that are rough on my body, but I also been on the healing side of knowing what to do about it. And I thought, like, I'm in this unique position to be able to bring these products to the world and explain them to people in ways that they can understand. And so, again, I'm always thinking of how I can take my past experiences and turn them into something that is useful for more than just me.
Well, that's really interesting. So, what differentiates your brand from the rest of the ones available in the market?
Yeah. So this is a question that I talk to my team about a lot, because at this point, cannabis is almost a commodity, and I tell the guys every day, and I say, we're not selling weed. Okay. Right. It's a lifestyle brand, and there's been so many like other narratives around cannabis. And I don't think those narratives are empowering. And I don't think that they are have the ability to they're not sustainable, these kind of hype brands. And my experience with cannabis is, especially if you have a relationship over time, okay, you have the ability to use this tool to grow immensely and become a better person. And so, for us, the flower, okay, it's not going to be 100% better than other people that are growing great flower, although we're going to have great flower. But the vibe and the energy that we're trying to create for people is something that is uplifting. And I see so much in the market, people call it a brand, and it just means we can make it look really fancy and convince you that we're cool, right? And it makes me sad that that's what people consider a brand. And to me, a brand is something that you would feel comfortable stamping on you because it affirms something that you truly believe in. And to me, I think of, we think of utilizing cannabis to be happy and to make other people feel good. Right. And to using that energy to see how you can, make your environment better. Always working, to help yourself, to help other people, to help the environment. And I feel like that's a brand that the world needs. And so I'm committed to doing what I can to get these ideas into the world.
That's really wonderful.
Yeah. How you want to help the community and everything. You've mentioned that social equity is necessary. Do you think, what do you think is necessary at this point to make the cannabis industry more equitable, to make it more equal for everybody, for all participants, not just one group in particular?
Yeah, that's a very complex issue, and there's a lot of different ways to approach it. It's a political issue, it's a socioeconomic issue, and it's also, for me, it's a spiritual issue. I think on what I've been appreciating is in America, especially, that they called it a war on drugs. And it really was a war on drugs. It's almost to the point of a civil war. In any type of war, there's casualties, there's scars, there's wounds. And I think in the war on drugs, right, most of the people that suffered those wounds, right, are in, Black and brown communities, right? And if for any country, any couple, any entity to move beyond war, there has to be some form of reparations, to address that we need to make things better so people can heal, right? And so I think part of the social equity it has to be dealt with for that reason, okay? And also, like I think typically in, Black and brown communities, people are more soulful, okay? They're more soulful. And I think the nature of any industry, especially an industry that surrounds a feminine, soulful plant, okay? This is the idea of diversity, and not diversity for a politically correct reason, but diversity because we need more opinions, more experiences, more perspectives in the room, right? And I think a lot of people in the industry, they're starting to see this as a money-making plant, right? And I think there's other people who have had deeper, more soulful experiences with this plant, and we need to make sure that their voices are at the table too, right? And I think that issue tends to bleed over and affect social equity.
And how do you think, and what do you think is the role that the brands play in this conversation? Brands like yours, that it's that has a wellness perspective to it, and other brands that maybe they are more commercial, but still are players in the industry. They still have a role to play in this, in the growth of the industry. What do you think is their role in this, and what would be like the optimus behavior for them to help with this issue?
Well, I mean, the simple answer is cooperation. It's cooperation, because even if you have diversity, but everyone doesn't have a voice at the table and there's no cooperation, it doesn't really matter. And it's true, right? We need the legacy farmers, the legacy cultivators, just the legacy people in the industry that have had to put their life on the line to keep this plan even in the conversation and fight for us to even get to this point, right? But we also need, right, innovation in business, and we need both. And in order for those to come together, we have to be willing to cooperate. And the nature and the spirit of this plan is it tends to lend towards cooperation. So I think as long as we have enough voices at the table, serving to remind us of this, I think we have a chance.
Okay, Mr. William. What do you think the cannabis
Building
industry,
on that,
what do you think the cannabis industry is going regarding minorities?
This do you, Ali, go girl.
Okay, so when we say the cannabis industry, especially in the United States, it's so different from state to state. And what I've noticed and I really love is seeing the newer states that are coming up with legislation are really taking the social equity issue seriously. And I'm not proud of it, but I was a little surprised at how seriously a lot of these states are taking it. And I think this, a lot of appreciation goes out to all these agencies and advocacy groups that are really pushing legislation to make sure that there is more equity. And I think, the fact that in every interview I do, we're having these conversations, it speaks to that the industry is at least making an attempt to move in the right direction. So I think a lot of what states are doing, expungement of records, and I think giving legacy cultivators and people who've been negatively affected by the war on drugs, giving them opportunities. I think that's moving us in the right direction, but I think it's something that we have to keep talking about and make sure it stays a priority.
I want to go back to the previous question because I want to build something that's right now the American society is very divided. It's very extremist, the right wing, the left wing, conservative, and progressive views. But it's still that section in the middle that used to be the center thinkers are still polarized, very polarized. Do you think cannabis and the industry can have a positive effect in building the country back to giving the space for conversation now that as Democrats and Republicans are pushing for legalization and federal banking and everything regarding the industry?
Yeah, well, I mean, the symbolism of it is amazing, and I think the first time that I noticed like this movement was at the beginning of COVID. When governments, local governments all across the country decided that cannabis was an essential. Fascinating, and so it seems to be something that the liberals, and the conservatives are willing to talk about, and realizing that feeling good is something that works for everyone, and I think it's a wonderful place. It's a wonderful place to start. And who knows if they start consuming together, right? Who knows what could happen?
Possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay, I like that spirit. I like it very much. Okay. What do you think your role will be in the cannabis industry as legalization expands in the United States and worldwide?
Yeah. Well, hopefully a thought leader, and specifically the brand, a thought leader in the world of sports. Because as it becomes legal, cannabis companies and leagues are going to join into partnerships. And I'd love to be ahead of that train. And I think that's one of the visions I have, is establishing ourselves as a quality brand. Because what I've built for myself through my experiences and career is some credibility, and to be able to utilize that through the brand to forge these relationships is what I'm really excited about.
What are your current plans? And then I'll build on the last question.
Sorry, can you repeat that one time?
What are your current plans with your brand and with your wellness movement and all that you're doing? Yeah.
So in general, the current plan is to spread our brand, around the country. We started in California and Oregon, and we figured if we can do this and be successful in California, we're confident that we can be successful anywhere. And because we're a brand, it's really a partnership model where we find partners, cultivation partners, sometimes sales and distribution partners in each of the markets. And so right now, really like honing in on our SOPs and how we're defining quality and finding partners who are willing, to make the investment to match the quality standards that we're seeking. So expansion, but also quality control, and like one of the things that we've been, I did a ceremony, a plant medicine ceremony a couple of weeks ago, and on a Native American reservation. And one of the main messages that I took from the ceremony was the responsibility to be a steward for the plant, and to make sure that business interests and money doesn't doesn't ruin this opportunity we have. And so, as an example, one of the things that our team has been talking about is we find partners in new states is really, promoting living soil and reminding people, right, that that this is a plant, and the more love and care and nature applied to this plant, the better quality of a product we're going to get. And I think I want to make sure that idea does not get lost.
And
That
then
was beautiful.
my last question, it's directly focused to that. Your Heisman's tagline is a spark greatness.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So I get that question a lot,
I know.
as a tagline, the mechanism here is for people to associate consuming cannabis with greatness. Okay. But the deeper idea of my story is my whole life I thought and defined greatness by what other people think about me, right? How many yards I have, how many touchdowns, how many stats. Okay. And as I started consuming cannabis, it became obvious to me that that's nice, but there's something greater out there for me. And when I walked away from football and that kind of greatness, I found astrology, I found meditation, I found something that was more fulfilling to me than just the football part. And that what I predict is that anyone who has a long-term relationship with cannabis is going to have very similar awarenesses. And so why not encourage them? Right? And so it really is about redefining greatness.
Instead of a greatness that reflects the exterior, it's a greatness that reflects your interior.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
That's gorgeous. That's beautiful.
Because what I found, and I see this with so many people, is we pit the two against each other, right? It's like, and that's what I was doing, right? And I realized that when you bring them together, it's so much better, so much better.
We go back to the beginning when we were talking about balance, cannabis, astrology, and all that. It really is at the end of the day balance, but balance between your inner self, your outer self, and all that surrounds you. And then that's where you apply how the plant helps you internally, but then astrology and the wellness helps you externally with the rest of the community. And it still reflects the plant. So it's a beautiful path.
This is great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Really inspiring.
Yeah. I have one last question that that is for our readers. What's your message to those that are starting in the cannabis industry or that are, let's just say, lost among all this information they receive continuously about the plant and the industry?
Yeah. That's just an issue that the world is facing right now. There's so much misinformation, but if it's important to you, it's worth the time to look. And the major thing is like trust yourself. Is that if as you look across this different information, like pay attention to what resonates with you, okay? And then experiment. It's kind of what I was saying earlier is that the negative stigma around cannabis is like it's hard for the mind to attach anything positive to it. And so people don't even allow themselves to experiment and see, And so I think, right, we're all scientists, right? Whether we realize it or not. So allow yourself to bring your mind and your discrimination to the experience of cannabis. And so read something and then try out for yourself and see. And I think that's the beauty. Cannabis helps you learn to trust what your gut says. It helps you trust what you feel.
Thank you so much. This has been really amazing, a wonderful interview, and really getting to know you and your brand has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for being so open